Last week on Brand for Good, we talked about how to build a brand people love. But once you've built that brand, how do you share it with the world? That's where this week's guest comes in. For over 40 years, Fred Meyers, founder and president of Queensboro, has been helping businesses, nonprofits, and organizations showcase their brands through custom embroidered and printed apparel. Queensboro is built on a simple but powerful mission: helping people share who they are with the world. In this episode, Fred shares the story behind Queensboro, the evolution of promotional products, and how the right branded apparel can turn customers into loyal ambassadors. If you want to take your brand from love to worn proudly, this is the episode for you. Let's get started. Welcome to Brand for Good, the show for purpose-driven leaders who want to build timeless brands and create sustainable impact. I'm Lorraine Sugart, former PR and marketing executive turned founder of the disruptive agency Prosper for Purpose. I've worked with some of the world's most beloved brands, and I'm here to help you elevate your brand identity, visibility, influence, and impact. Are you ready to brand for good? Let's go. So welcome to Brand for Good, Fred Meyers. It's so good to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm excited to have a nice conversation here with you this afternoon.
Yeah, me too. It's really interesting. I've been reading about your story, and I want to start by rolling back the clock a little bit and go back to the late 1970s when you were inspired to start Queensboro. So tell us a little bit about your inspiration and the gap that you saw in the market at that point.
Yeah, I was a little bit of a unintentional entrepreneur, I guess. In the late 70s, I was just starting college in New York, and it was a time when the Lacoste Alligator shirts were really popular, and obviously we're dating. Anybody who remembers that is dating themselves a little bit.
I
Yeah,
remember.
preppy handbook, and there's a lot of interesting stuff going on then. But it was one of the first real kind of crazy fads that I experienced in my life. And I actually grew up wearing those shirts and always loved them. I did the laundry in my house, and my father used to wear them, so I used to wash them and saw how great they came out of the dryer and how really nice they were. Little did I know at the time when I was doing my chores that was going to be my future in my career. But as the brand started kind of growing into that phase of ubiquity, I got to the point where I wasn't really identifying with what the brand was standing for. And having grown up loving those shirts, I was thinking, gosh, I wish you could get that same shirt with anything you wanted on it instead of an alligator or, some kind of status symbol thing. And this was
Right.
the time also that Ralph Lauren was starting his brand, his business. We started about the same time. He's a little bit before me. But, when he came out with his version with a little polo player on it, it kind of
Right.
took the whole industry to the next level. And so, yeah, I always thought, wouldn't it be great if you could get the same quality shirt? Because, I always appreciated that with any logo or design you wanted on it. And, as the business has evolved over the years, we're really catering mostly to small and medium-sized businesses now. But the original idea was that people would kind of come up with their own personal brands. And this is like kind of in the area that you're interested in. But as it turns out, as I started advertising and things, the companies were the people that had the logos and the idea of getting people to create designs for themselves. We were still way ahead of our time in that regard. And, I still feel like there's a good potential for that down the road. And the online graphic capabilities are still, they've got a ways to go before it's really easy for somebody to create their own personal kind of logo and brand. But we'll be ready when they're ready. We'll be ready to go off in that direction. Though I have to say, one of the delights of my business over the last 45 years has been working in, we call it B to SMB, business to small or medium-sized business.
Oh,
And
interesting. Okay.
yeah, so B2B generally, since we're selling to big businesses, generally selling jets
Yeah.
and, big stuff. But SMBs are called small, medium-sized businesses. And Lorraine, these are the best people in the entire world,
I love that.
especially in America, where we've got so many entrepreneurs and everybody's doing their thing, chasing their dream, living their dream. And working with these folks is fantastic because, we're all kind of in it together, and we're all, you make a mistake occasionally. Everybody makes a mistake, and, you say, hey, we messed up. And they're like, you wouldn't believe what I did yesterday, like as opposed to the consumer, when you sell to consumers, we know about how demanding they've gotten to be. I love everybody. So it's not like I don't like consumers, but working with these small businesses has been a tremendous unforeseen benefit of the last 45 years of
They get it,
experience,
right?
fellow entrepreneurs.
Businesses get
Yeah,
it.
they get it. They get it. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's just shirts, at the end of the day. It's
So let
just
me ask
shirts.
you this. You're talking
Yeah.
about small business. What is probably the smallest custom embroidered order that you've ever done?
So we'll do just one item. That's one of the
Oh,
things that always
really?
has been unique about us is we kind of carved out our niche in that kind of sub size that any professional, intelligent, embroidery company would take
Minimum
on.
50 or something like that.
Right. So we were always about being the most efficient at doing small orders quickly and efficiently. We'll talk about it more, sure, as we go on, but we've always made heavy investments in technology and infrastructure, so we were able to manage that whole process. But yeah, over the years, we've kind of gone back and forth with minimum order sizes and stuff, but it's always been, no more than 4 or 6 items, maybe $100 at the most, $75 right now. We've got a new customer acquisition offer that we're featuring on Google and Facebook and some of those places where for $4.95, you can get a really nice quality polo shirt with your logo embroidered on it. No charge for the embroidery, no charge for the logo setup. If you end up buying, I think $50 total in your order, you get free shipping. If you just buy one shirt, it's just another $5 to ship the shirt to you wherever you are. So for $10, you actually, all in $10, you get a single shirt. You get a single shirt with your logo. And if for some reason you don't like it when you get it, just call us up and tell us, I'm not happy. And if you want your money back, we'll give you your money back. If you want another shirt, we'll send you another shirt. But you don't have to return the shirt back to us if you're not happy for any reason.
That's
But
amazing.
we get very few shirts back. We get very few complaints about that.
That's great. So any solopreneurs or creative entrepreneurs listening, this is your opportunity to get a custom shirt at a below affordable price. That's pretty great.
Yeah. So, over the years, what we've learned is if you do a good job for people, they'll remember you, they'll come back. And that's how relationships, you don't propose on the first date, right?
That's right.
Sometimes it's a cup of coffee. Sometimes it's you light somebody's cigarette or whatever, but you don't propose on the first date.
Right.
Although I've heard people doing that. My grandfather did that with my grandmother, and they were married for a long time. She didn't say yes right away, but he kept bugging her until she did say yes.
All right. So you started your business in your college dorm room. So what were you studying in college? I'm just really curious how you go from
Yeah.
starting in your college dorm room. Were you studying business or merchandising, or what were you focused on in college?
Well, I was pretty anti-business in
Okay.
college. I went to study liberal arts. I was a comparative literature and American history major at a Duke
Nice.
2 major. I enjoyed school, college, and was thinking that probably could be my path. But I got to say, I got a little disillusioned by the kind of the professional environment in academia.
Mm,
And I didn't feel like people were kind of doing it for the right reasons and stuff. And like I said, I was an accidental entrepreneur. So I never thought when I kind of started getting involved with this was going to be a career, but I was kind of looking for something different than academics.
got
So
it.
real quickly about the academics in New York, I was in New York at the time, and New York is such a competitive, and a lot of the academics there are kind of competing with the people that make all that money in New
Mhm.
York for social status and things. And that was not a race that I wanted to get into.
I get that. Yeah. So when
So,
you graduated, how did you take the business from your college dorm room? What happened next in those first few years?
yeah. So as I was kind of coming to the end of the college career and realizing that there's a cold, cruel world out there, I went to my parents and I said, maybe I should go to business school because, I figured they'd think that was a good idea. So I actually went to business school just
Yeah.
delaying the inevitable for a couple of years. In New York still, I was still in New York, so I was able to kind of transition what I was doing from one school to the next school. And it was actually the same school that I went to, business school. So I was living in an apartment. I didn't even have to move. It was
That's nice.
continuous. Yeah, it was nice. And, continue to kind of work on this thing is a side hustle, as we call it these days. And, it kept me sane while I was in business school because, having studied liberal arts and humanities and that stuff, I hadn't taken any economics courses or any of that stuff. So that was all new to me. And, I was glad to have something outside of the classroom to kind of have some context to put everything against that I was learning in business school.
That makes a lot of sense. That's really interesting. So when you graduated from business school, you apparently decided that this was going to be your business.
I didn't decide. So, sometimes we decide, sometimes things are decided for us. So,
Okay.
I was, like I say, liberal arts and wrote a lot. And I guess I was a pretty good writer. I still like to write a lot of the copy and stuff. But when I was graduating from business school, I went directly from college. I had no experience. So the only thing that I even had to put on a resume was this little shirt company that I had started in school a couple of years ago. And doing what you do when you write a resume, you try to squeeze every little drop of credibility or excitement out of your experience. I had a bunch of these recruiters came up to school. I had a bunch of interviews with fancy companies. I had to put on a tie, which was really tough. And, we had nice conversations and they were kind of talking, looking at my resume and they're saying, with all due respect, you've got this great thing going with your business. Why would you want to come work for us? And the fact of the matter is I didn't want to go to work for them. I wasn't ready. I was 22 or something. I wasn't ready to be a grown-up. Not sure I'm still ready to be a grown-up, but I didn't get a single job offer coming out of college. So I figured, well, let me do this until I run out of money. And, I'll still be young enough so that I can kind of get my feet under me and get a real job. That was 40. I graduated business school in 1983. So I guess 41 years ago or something.
So Queensboro has been around for more than 45 years, which is certainly a testament to its durability and adaptability. So what would you say were some of the pivotal innovations or strategic decisions that kind of fueled your longevity?
I'm kind of curious person by nature. And one of the big innovations that happened early in my business career was the introduction of this thing called the 800 number. So all of a sudden people had a way to, it used to be a big deal if you had to make a long distance phone call. It's expensive. It's like, don't bother me. I'm on long distance, when trying to talk to your mother sometimes. So that kind of opened up an ability for you to communicate with customers for no price, low price. And you could put an ad in a small ad in the back of a magazine or newspaper and people would, just call you for free and they wouldn't hesitate. I don't know how much it would cost. It's probably $1 or $2 to make a call back in those days, long distance, but that kind of overcame a big burden. So the decision was like, let me see if I can get a little ad together and put it in the New Yorker or Wall Street Journal or New York Times. And people start calling,
Yeah.
And the first ad I remember that I ran, I just put my home phone number in there. And one morning at like 6 o'clock in the morning, 6:30, the phone rang. And it's like, oh, hello? And it's like, oh, do you have this ad running in the New Yorker? And I said, yeah, I do. And they said, well, that's what we're calling for. And all of a sudden I realized like, I got to get organized here. But as kind of the ads started happening more and I could see that in order to stay organized on this stuff, you really needed a good system around managing your leads and tracking where they came from, all that stuff. So I was never really a computer person myself, but I made a decision early on to build software actually to manage this whole order process because at the time there was some computer stuff that was available if you wanted to kind of track standard data like a number or an order from one place to another, but to attach an image because all my customers were giving me logos, attach an image to that order. That required some creative doing. There wasn't anything around that, so I found some crazy people in Brooklyn and Queens to write software for me. Back in the day, it was on DBase 3, and some of these early spreadsheet programs and stuff. So like I say, I wasn't a geek, but the stuff was really cool to see what you could do with the
Yeah, you were
computers. And
curious and, you
I was
followed that
curious.
thread.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked a little bit before we got on the podcast about how the company has kind of morphed and changed and how you changed locations as well. You went from what 20 some years in North Carolina to Dallas. Has that been easy to kind of adapt as the company grows, or is that something that you embrace being a curious person, or have some of those changes been harder than the others?
Well, they've all been hard. In hindsight, they've all been hard. I think if you ever really knew what you were getting into when you take on change, nobody would ever do it.
That's true.
But I've been to amazing places in this business, being in textile related stuff. I mean, I've been all over the world sourcing products and stuff, and I love to see what's out there. And, I grew up in Connecticut and went to school in New York, so I was in the same neighborhood. So when in 1995, I lost my lease in New York, and I was thinking about what am I going to do next? And the idea of going to North Carolina was an option because I had suppliers down there. I thought, wow, that's going to be really exciting. I'm going to get to see the South. Heard about the South all my life, and missed the winters, and found a beautiful little town in North Carolina, Wilmington, North Carolina, right on the ocean.
Ah,
And
Wilmington's beautiful.
yeah, amazing place, absolutely amazing place. And really a great place to put roots down for a business. When I was in New York 15 years, when I was just getting ready to move, I didn't have a single employee that had been with me more than a year because the workforce is just so transit in the
Yeah.
cities. So I was constantly hiring, constantly training. And, I've got people in Dallas that I hired my first year in Wilmington that have moved with me to Dallas from North Carolina. So I was
That's
really able
great.
to, yeah, I was really
Yeah.
able to get some great roots down over there and build an amazing team. And then, having kind of lived in New York and gone to the smaller town, North Carolina, when coming through COVID and stuff, when the idea kind of came to me that, maybe it makes sense to get another location, a little more centrally located in the country. And I came
Yeah.
down to look at Dallas. I was just taken by the place. I mean, Dallas is a great city. Like outside of Texas, people think Texans are kind of crazy. And I kind of thought so too. But there's a reason why so many people have moved here, especially, if you're interested in business and that kind of thing. It's a great business environment. And, one of the things I really enjoyed about my time in New York is, the people from all over the world selling there. And of all the great things about North Carolina, it didn't have that aspect of it. But to be in Dallas now, like, it's got that immigrant mentality to a lot of the population still. You wouldn't
Mhm.
necessarily associate that with Texas, Dallas, but it's definitely here. And it really, I kind of felt like I was ready for the next challenge in North Carolina. And this was a great place to land. And I'm just really grateful that I've had the opportunity to live in New York, to live in Wilmington, North Carolina, a beautiful place, and now to live in Dallas. So, that kind of offsets the difficulties that you encounter as you hit these different places. And, it's been a wild ride.
Every place has its own flavor, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So we talked a lot about you serving small businesses, but I do have to note that you also serve major brands like Costco, Burger King, and Pepsi. And so what is that like when you have like these probably massive orders coming in compared to some of the small ones? Have you had to structure your business to work on both sides of that market, or is it just something that you're able to adapt into the business model easily?
Yeah, so we've gotten a little more selective, I would say, or our niche has kind of honed itself a little bit over the years. And when we work with these bigger companies, we're generally not working like with Costco corporate, but
Okay.
with like teams within the Costco brand and Burger King. We've got a lot of there's a lot of individual franchisees that own the
Okay,
Burger
great.
King.
Yeah.
So we've got this team within our business here. We call it Queensboro Plus, and they develop the direct relationships. It's not a sales team, but it's more like an inside sales team. They develop the direct relationships with the bigger customers that order more frequently and require a little more familiarity with the history and things of the order, so that if somebody would just call in They don't need to get somebody up to speed with all the details of their history with us and stuff. So that's how
Right.
we've been able to handle that side of the business is through our Queensboro Plus team.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But, one of the things that we changed a year or two ago, which really simplified the business a lot, is even with that group of customers, which for our larger customers, over the years, we used to sell on credit terms to them, but we never really had the team in place to kind of collect receivables and things like that. So
Okay. Yeah.
about a year and a half ago, we switched everybody to credit card prepay before the order. And even with that, these bigger companies have continued to order from us now. It's a different world today with all the credit card benefits and all that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah, it really is. And prepay is just so much easier too, because
yeah,
now you spend a lot of time chasing down customers otherwise.
hard not to take it personally when somebody doesn't pay you for your
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, for sure. So I want
Yeah.
to ask you a little bit about the power of branded apparel for business. Can you talk a little bit about the role branded apparel can play in helping small to medium businesses build their brand presence?
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting question because it's not an easy thing to answer. And
I don't ask easy questions.
because how can you measure the impact of having your guys behind the counter in a logo polo as opposed to just a regular nice shirt, and how do you measure the value of you're out shopping at Costco or something in your company shirt and somebody says, oh, what's that all about?
Mhm.
It's so what I say in response to that question is that this is a humongous industry now. I was actually the first person to put an embroidered logo on a polo shirt and sell it to a company 45 years ago.
Wow.
I don't want to say I invented the internet.
But you invented the embroidered custom polish.
Yeah, but it is especially worldwide, billions and billions and billions of dollars. And, part of that is like these massive, massive companies, but a lot of it is the small companies. And, follow the money.
Right.
If it didn't work, if it didn't have benefit, it wouldn't exist. So for me, I'm wearing my logo hat now. There's a lot of just psychological pride that an owner gets by wearing his logo and, that being his kind of team uniform. And what's the benefit for that? It's a lot, especially you see somebody like your kids wearing your company stuff
Yeah.
and your wife, your grandmother. My grandmother used to love to wear Queensboro
Aw,
shirts. It was amazing. I mean,
that's so
nothing has
cool.
ever made me happier in my years in business than to see my grandmother wearing
That is
a
so
shirt with my logo on
nice.
it. Our mission is helping people share who they are with the world. And, there's something special that really happens when you take a nice shirt and a nice logo and you put them together, and 1 and 1 equals more than 2. They say a picture's worth 1,000 words. And,
Mhm.
that's the impact that a logo has when somebody sees that. It definitely makes an impression in a way that when you speak and you interact with the customer a different way. So in 40 whatever years, I've seen millions of logos, literally millions of logos. And, every day I walk out on the floor and watch the machines going, and I'll see a logo and say, wow, that is an effective logo. I mean, I get it immediately. Exactly
Yeah,
what the person is all about, what they're trying to do. They pick great colors for their logo. I mean, this is one that really, really works.
that's great.
So I would say before you invest in shirts with your logo, invest in your logo, make sure that's really working for you, and then leverage it however you can.
That makes a lot of sense. Yes. Yes, have it professionally done. Okay, I'm totally curious now. You embroider polos, you embroider probably work shirts, hats. What's your most popular item?
So our most popular item is the one we sell for $5. Big surprise there. It's the polo
Okay, that
shirt.
does make sense. But you don't
Yeah.
always sell it for $5, do you? I thought that was
No.
okay. It's a
If you want to
limited
buy more, then
promotion.
right. But that is our most popular product, that basic polo shirt.
Okay, I'm gonna
Um,
have to go get one of those because there's no better
absolutely.
than a $5 shirt. Then I want to hear what
Yeah.
you say about my logo when you see it out there.
Your branding is excellent. I've seen some of it,
Okay, thank you.
but so
It better be
you've
since
got
that's
something to
what
work
we
with.
do.
I hope so. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
cobbler's children, they say, don't have shoes,
Well,
but,
that's true. That's
um,
true. But yeah,
so
I
the
try hard.
polos are very popular for us. That was kind of our bread and butter. That's where we started.
Right.
T-shirts, we sell T-shirts both embroidered and printed.
Hmm.
Um, for T-shirts, we can also do just one at a time on those. And sweatshirts are very
Oh
popular this
yeah,
time of year.
sweatshirts. Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And sweatshirts that, like polo shirts don't embroider sometimes on a thinner material. Sometimes the embroidery can be a little bit of a challenge if there's a lot of stitches and having it lay flat and everything. But sweatshirts and hats really embroider beautifully. I mean, it really
Yeah.
is a showcase for logo because the material is a little thicker and can kind of sit in there. And embroidery, it's three-dimensional. So it's got a life to it. And, the light hits it and it reflects the threads, and they can really be beautiful.
I love this. I love your passion for it. So, with trends now like sustainable fashion and on demand production, where do you see the future of branded apparel heading?
So definitely the on-demand is important because the cost of stocking inventory and, creating stuff and holding in a lot of different locations is so great that being able to be flexible and nimble in your production is very important. And I'll just say real quickly a topical story, these tariffs that Trump is talking about, a big issue with both Canada and China is they've got this $800 exemption for goods coming into the country, which was supposed to be, this is from China as well, it was supposed to be about tourists going and buying, maple syrup and tortillas or whatever in Mexico. And this was their exemption, what they brought into the country. And then Timo and all these Shane and all these companies, they started using that exemption to ship these small orders into
Mm,
the United States without any duties and taxes on it. And, it's hurt a lot of people and avoided a lot of revenue. So, and they were setting up these on-demand models outside of the country that could benefit from not having to pay tax on the stuff, duties and tax on the stuff that came in. So I think what we're going to see if, as this all kind of shakes out, is that it's on demand in the country, in the United States, is going to become even more important and stuff. As far as the sustainable things are concerned, I'm not seeing that as being a huge factor. I mean, people are always trying to do things more efficiently and with less pollution and that kind of stuff. And that's always going to happen. The costs right now associated with sustainability on apparel are kind of prohibitive. The world that we're traveling in, like, kind of price
right,
sensitive promotional products.
right.
On the higher levels, you can afford that a little more. But I will say that the technologies that have been developed to dye and finished fabrics are phenomenal. Use a fraction of the water that they used to use, a fraction of the pollutants, like the dye stuff is kind of nasty stuff. But they've developed
Right.
these new dyes that are much less. It's going to happen. I feel like as with alternative energy, it's the market's going to dictate that because it's going to become too expensive not to do it in time. But I don't see that as something that's happening immediately.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. So, final question. A lot of apparel businesses have started and gone out of business since you
Yeah.
founded Queensboro. How do you think that you have managed to continue to grow while others have not?
Well, I think the single most important thing is that from early on, I recognized the importance of developing that relationship with the final user of the product. So rather than selling through a retail store or selling like to Costco, for whatever they're going to do, I was much more focused on having a lot of small businesses that I could have direct relationships with than a few big ones that, if they can buy the
Yeah.
product for a few cents cheaper, they didn't have no real loyalty there. So I stayed on a lane where you could develop relationships, you could build loyalty, and of course, never took for granted those relationships with the customers. And it's a slower path to growth to have to have 1,000 customers. 1,000 small customers instead of 5 small ones. But, that's a lot of times what happens, with these fast growth companies is they develop a couple of relationships that gets them to scale real fast, and then things start falling apart. And it is difficult to scale a business. I mean, it is very difficult to scale a business. And you make a wrong turn, you buy the wrong software. Fortunately, we've always built all our own software. So I've seen people make bad decisions there, and it kills them. We've had vendors, that have made big software switches, and it's really hurt them. So, but the other part of that question is, it turns out that my superpower is I've got a survival instinct.
Figure it out.
I've had my back to the wall many, 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 many times, and somehow I figured out how to get out of a jam. And, mostly that's because, I've got relationships with people trust me. I hope, I hope I've earned their trust over time if I needed a favor or something. So, I think that I've always been more concerned about doing it right and doing more of it. And, you give up something with that, but you get something out of it also.
In the end, it's all about relationships.
Yep.
Fred Meyers, thank you so much for being my guest on the Brand for Good podcast episode today. I will have links to your $5 shirt offer and your website and your social profiles in the show notes of today's episode. So if you are listening, be sure to check out Fred Meyers and Queensboro. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lorraine.
Thanks, Fred.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Brand for Good show. If you like what you heard, please hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode, and leave a review so other purpose-driven leaders can find this valuable content. To learn more about building a brand for good, please visit prosperforpurpose.com for more resources and information on all the ways you can work with us.